All right, folks. So we've been able to have a lovely chat with Amit Shah, writer and former publishing professional and author of this exquisite collection here, Revisiting the Minds, excuse me. So part one of the interview, we had an opportunity to chat and I asked him some questions. And now we're in part two. So without further ado, I'm going to give Amit an opportunity to read a selection here.
Okay, thank you. The selection is called Notes of a Summer, and there are three what would be vignettes of separate summers. So here's the start. It's a quotation from Gwendolyn Brooks. Exhaust the little moment, soon it dies, and be it gash or gold, it will not come again in this identical guise. Summer in India of the 1950s and 60s, mangoes, mangoes, and more mangoes. At that time, we went to my parents' house in Hazaribagh in the mineral-rich low hills of modern-day Jharkhand, land of forests, about 250 miles northwest of Kolkata, where the nearest railhead at that time was 60 miles away. Almost every year during the summer, uh, the property had 4 to 5 acres of land, a large portion of which had mango trees. During the summer, the tree branches would stoop in supplication under their burden, pleading for the ripened fruit to be plucked. India is a land of extremes. So much of it is staggeringly incomprehensible. All the cliches are true: the beauty and the scholar, the creativity and the thuggery. How can a culture that spawned the inclusivity of Hinduism also embrace the viciousness of casteism? How could the land of the Buddha be drenched routinely in blood? How could a country where 10% of the people control over 75% of the wealth be the birthplace of one of the greatest philosophers of the modern world, Swami Vivekananda? This is the man who said, so long as the millions live in hunger and ignorance, I hold every person a traitor, who, having been educated at their expense, pays not the least heed of them. In today's India, this might draw a first information report, an FIR, from the modern day religious saber rattlers. Mangoes are no different in India, varieties in excess and extreme. There are you ready? Approximately 1,500 varieties, according to government sources. But we didn't have 1,500 varieties hanging from the branches at Hazaribagh. We had, I think, a combination of 6 varieties that grow in Bengal and Bihar and part of what is now Jharkhand. Gulab Khas, Himsagar, Kisan Bhog, Lakshman Bhog, Langra, Fazli. We ate mangoes morning, noon, and night, and then we'd load 2 cars full, I mean full, with jute sacks loaded with these delicacies and transport them to Kolkata for the children at the blind school. Sometimes the lead car, a 1950s Chevy station wagon, Woody, with a wooden exterior paneling and styling, would be so overstuffed that the rear fender would spark on the asphalt road as it bounced along. There'd be numerous flat tires and repairs and picnics by the roadside before we rolled into our courtyard 12 to 14 hours later. Summer, India, 1983. My sister went to India in June with her husband. I saw them off at Kennedy Airport in New York. The first AIDS cases were making national headlines. I remember talking about it as we waited for the flight to be called. In India, the summer flowers, Moa carvari, white lily, pink hibiscus, were in bloom. When she landed at her final destination after a short flight from Kolkata to Ranchi, about 40, 50 miles from Hazaribagh, she was told that our father had died that morning. He had planned to drive from Hazaribagh to Ranchi to pick them up, but probably had a heart attack, his third, when he tried to get out of bed. He slid to the floor, resting on his knee, his hands on the bed, head bowed at the edge of the mattress. That's where my mother found him. He was a meticulous man. He kept a blue pocket diary where he wrote things he had to do, how much money he had in his pockets each night, something he'd read. The last entry read, pick up poo-poo and bill at Ranchi. Take water bottle. I have the diary. I still look at the page sometimes. Summer, India, 1989. It's 3 a.m. in mid-June, and I'm pacing the deserted Bombay airport terminal. This is long before the city became Mumbai and long before the terminal adopted the glittering, brash airport anywhere in the world look. Then it was more like a clean bus station. I'm smoking one cigarette after another. Thank goodness the tea and coffee stall is still open. I get minuscule cups of coffee, Nescafe for sure. I'm waiting for the first flight at dawn to Calcutta, having flown in nonstop from New York about an hour earlier. I'd raced out of New York with a carry-on bag and a card in my pocket from my first wife, Lisa, who'd put a photo of my firstborn, Arnav, for my mother in Calcutta. Ma hadn't seen Arnav. He was 7 months old. Later that morning, I land in Calcutta. Mesho, my youngest maternal aunt's husband, wraps me in his arms as I exit immigration. He's almost 6'4", a giant by Indian standards of his generation, and as handsome as a movie star. I always thought he was a Gregory Peck doppelganger. He told me my mother had passed away in the early morning, probably as I was pacing the terminal in Bombay, destroying my lungs. Summer, Maine, 2022. Pam leads a wildflower walk in Western Maine. I go along. She has taught herself so much about wildflowers, most often ignored by people like me tromping along trails. I'm someone who marvels at a particular type of obsession to understand bits of our natural and physical universe. Even if I lack understanding of the urge in its entirety, I'm mesmerized at the effort. She trained as a classicist at one of the best institutions in the world for that area of study. It had limited cachet in the commercial world, but its sheer poetry in its aesthetics and learning about our past. She brings the same scholarship and joy and depth of discovery to wildflowers, the forest and the forest floor. Before she started the walk, she introduced us to a quote. Of course, it applies to so much more than the forest floor. Many an object is not seen, though it falls within the range of our visual ray, because it does not come within the range of our intellectual ray. That is, we are not looking for it. So in the largest sense, we find only the world we look for. And this is from Thoreau in Thoreau's Wildflowers. Thanks.
Thank you so much. What sticks out to me hearing you read it is the push and pull or the ebb and the flow that the first summer, that first cycle through, abundance, and then loss, and then another summer of loss, and then there's the lesson. So, did you find that as you were putting that together, was that intentional from the outset, or again, did that come as you continued to excavate?
I think the final structure of that piece came together as I was writing it. I was going to write maybe one or two of those events, and then I realized that they were all summers, and so I pulled that together. That
Mhm.
those, yeah, there was summer of losses, and I didn't want to end. I didn't consciously think about the last art, but it was the most recent one. And it did eventually become an art because the last one is actually something I feel is joyous, that is of discovery, that the world is much, much larger, and we tend to only see a small portion of it. Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, when was the last opportunity that you had to spend a summer in India?
Yeah. uh, in 2018, I believe. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is the year I'm going back
Hmm.
with my youngest son. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yes.
exciting.
It
Hmm.
is because he's never been. My
Hmm.
oldest has, but my youngest hasn't. And so there's a portion, a couple of weeks, where I'll be seeing India through him. Uh, you know, yeah.
Can you say a little bit more for the audience? You said India is a land of extremes. And it's, not that it's not clear in the piece, but maybe expound on that a bit because of your relationship to the land and the people.
Yeah. I think of India, and I will stand by it. This is a certainty that India is probably one of the most diverse countries in the world, and diverse not just um, languages and faiths, but also cuisine, art, fabric, climate. It is just unbelievably diverse. And so the extremes are, there's incredible wealth in India. You go to the cities, and in today's what about now? Can you hear me? Should we come back?
Okay. Now, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I got a really weird notification and it said Zoom audio is not responding. I didn't do anything differently here and there was nothing up with the Wi-Fi. So, um, sorry, folks. So we can just return to what you were talking about. You were saying that you're having an opportunity to go to India with your youngest son this summer, and then we started talking about how you had mentioned in the piece that you just read, it's a land of extremes, and so we can I guess pick up from there.
Yes. So, in short, I was saying where I left off was how diverse India is. That is incredibly diverse in all its ways: cuisine, clothes, language, faith, um, and climate as well. Um, and the other extreme in India, um, they're like little countries, the provinces, because you cross borders and you change the language, you change the cuisine. You know, the faith is, there's some variation on the faith. It is pretty amazing. Now, on the other extreme is how much wealth there is in India and the divide. The economic divide is really severe. Now, when I was growing up, there wasn't really a middle class, which exists in huge numbers today. But it's still a country where a small percentage of people own three-quarters of the wealth of that country. So when you go to cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, it could be a Western city, except that it's overcrowded and smoggy. But you know, it's palatial. There is so much that the uh, upper middle class people have, and so much struggle at still at the rural level or in the cities where there are gig workers and day laborers. So it is a country that is startling to me um, in its diversity, and also because of the extreme wealth and extreme poverty. And you can't judge the whole country by it. Of course, in economic terms, you can. And I'm on a panel tomorrow where we're going to talk about um, what went right for the first 20 years and what went wrong in the first 20 years after independence. And
Really?
yeah, so that's kind of interesting because it made me sit down and think about what was what were some of the things that India has done right, and there's a lot that can be improved. Yeah. So uh, it always struck me when I was growing up because the divide was so startling then, um, and I just happened to be on the lucky side, and I I feel that all the time as to how lucky some of us are because we just happen to be in a particular side, in a particular place. The entire world. I mean, yeah,
So I teach English literature slash humanities and some other
yeah,
stuff. And so I taught at a boarding school for a couple of years. And, the previous guy had done this really elaborate proposal for a South Asian literature course. But then when I looked at the syllabus, I was just like, oh, these are Indian novels, which is fine. But I'm just like, okay, but we're selling this as, all of South Asia. And so I really wanted to be careful with that and precise because there were South Asian students who specifically signed up for that course so they could see themselves reflected in literature. And,
hmm
I've always loved Rushdie and Arundhati Roy, but, a quality that I see in their writing is the massive size of the worlds that they create. And so I've
yeah,
always wondered is there something about the land and the culture that kind of naturally, lends itself to that. So I haven't been yet myself, but definitely a fan of the
yeah.
literature.
There's a tremendous amount of translated works now, and also people writing uh, in English who are not uh, uh, internationally known, but they're very, very good writers. And publishing in India is thriving. is English language publishing in India is absolutely thriving. Every single company, US company has an Indian arm. And yeah, and people, English still is a language of connection, and people learn it. I I mentor a bunch of young students every Saturday morning on Zoom. They're first time students, first time learners, and they they all are learning English because it still is the currency. Yeah.
Hey, excellent. And just as we wrap up here, what advice might you give emerging writers who, either are working on, a collection of essays or just writing advice in general about process?
Well, I'm kind of I can talk about process, but I can I have to say that I don't follow it as much as I would like to. Um, but if you want to write, you have to write. There are no two ways about it. Um, find some time, whatever it takes to sit down. You might not write more than a couple of sentences every day, but try to do that with intentionally. Um, and in terms of the process, um, th- I'm always thinking, I go for walks. I'm always thinking about things. And oftentimes I'm thinking about pieces that I might write. A lot of the time I don't end up writing it, but a lot of the time I do rush back home and jot down notes because I know that I'm going to take it somewhere. So that's also something that just because you don't have a finished idea, and I speak more for myself because I was very results oriented when I was in publishing. And so I would want something to be fully fleshed out in my mind before I would sit down to write it. But now I realize that really holds me back. That I can, and that's where the Substack comes in for me because um, I would say that I played around with these essays. Uh, 90% of these essays I played around on Substack in some form. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And as I said before, I'll definitely post a link to your Substack, because I have you in my app, and when I'm reading the
yeah.
notifications and going to the posts as they come in. Now I wanted to just because as you were talking, I was wondering, from, initial concept to, when it went to the printer, how long would you say it took to put Revisiting the Minds together?
It took a little, about a year,
Wow.
about a year. It was with the publisher. I handed in the manuscript in early 2024, and it was
Hmm.
published in December of 2024. So it was about 9 to 10 months at least.
Hmm. And then how long had you worked on the manuscript by
Before
yourself?
that, about 6 or 7 months before that. Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's very disciplined. I mean, for me, I put around, and then also I just lose track of time. Like I have an essay that I've been working on now, and then my students got into conferences and midterms, and it's like, oh, okay, you haven't worked on this in 3 weeks. Like, how did that happen? And so I'm very much at this point, still considering myself a baby writer, concerned with process because I'm like, I actually need one.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
ask everybody, I'm like, what's your process? But all of that being said, is there anything else you would like the audience to either know about you as an artist or about this collection?
Uh, I would say that um, I was just thinking about Substack. That is a wonderful um, uh, access point for writers, um, because there are writers who haven't written in 2, 3 years a finished book, but I follow them on Substack, and they're churning out every week. There's something that's coming from them in their voice, and that before Substack, we didn't have that opportunity to be with the writer while they're kind of struggling through. So that's a real plus. Um, I joined an online group um, that had people from all over the world at a specific time um, in the morning for me for about 3 or 4 months. Uh, it was just a space to do whatever you wanted to. If you wanted to send out emails, that was fine. But it was a commitment that I made about showing up and sitting down and thinking about perhaps the piece I wanted to write, or play around with the draft, etc. So commitment is a big deal, and it is self-motivating. Uh, it has to be, because you could get dinged by your publisher, but that's not going to get you to write, you know. Yeah.
All right.
And I write for myself. I mean, that's the other part, is that once I stop thinking about, will others love what I'm writing? And um, uh, my first stop is, I'm doing this for myself. And then I'm going to take it out into the world, and perhaps it'll be liked or not liked. But I'm going to write for myself. That freed me up. Yeah.
Yes, I find like a good writing session, a good hour, couple of hours where, I don't have any distractions and, I can feel really connected with what I'm putting on the page. It just it puts you just in a really great mood for the rest of the day. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that works really well for me, I like to read, and I read a lot. Sometimes I have two books going, an audio book and a physical book. Um, but I also take, they're not strictly seminars, but they're like book discussions, and with a leader. And I, I'm with a group of people. I'm with the same leader for a while. Her excitement at what she's chosen and what we've chosen to discuss is really motivating to me, because a lot of it, of course, is about structure and uh, about writing genres and uh, the meaning of what the narrative is trying to do. So that also keeps me um, close to the writing. Yeah,
Yeah, the community element, but then also your passion for your work and, other people's passion for the work as well.
yeah, yeah.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, Amit Shah, thank you so much for joining us this evening and for giving us an opportunity to learn more about you as an artist and more about revisiting the mines. I'm going to, as soon as these videos save, go ahead and upload it well, I'm not going to date it because it'll be, a replay. But the long and the short of it is, the broadcasts are about to go live on social media. And so you can check it out there, Instagram and YouTube. And I'm Deanne Battle, and this has been The Composite Season 5, Episode 7. All right. And so I'll stop recording and we will catch you next time.
Thank you so much.